We are close to the end of 2022, and therefore it is time to take stock of Russia's achievements in various technical areas and see what new and interesting things await the country in the coming year. Director General of the Roscosmos Agency Yuri Borisov on December 21 in his interview announced the completion of the space year by Russia, reporting on 22 launches of Russian rockets. So we will start summing up the results of 2022 with astronautics. To begin with, let's look at what the world astronautics has achieved. If in 2021 China was the leader in the number of rocket launches with a result of 55 rocket launches, and the United States was in second place with a result of 42 rocket launches, then in 2022 the Americans jumped ahead sharply, as of mid-December, sending 81 rockets into space against 57 Chinese missiles. By the way, 7 American Atlas rockets and 2 Antares rockets went into space on Russian first-stage engines. The U.S. leadership was provided by the SpaceX Falcon 9 carrier, the number of launches of which in 2022 increased from 31 to 54 compared to 2021. Here the bet on reusability played. Due to the return of the first stage, which accounts for about 2/3 of the cost of the entire rocket, SpaceX was able to greatly reduce the cost of launches. Imagine the savings if the first stage of one of the Falcon 9s landed safe and sound for the 14th time in September. But back to Russian affairs. So, in 1922, Russia launched 22 space rockets. Moreover, all launches were trouble-free. In terms of number, this is less than in 2021, when 3 more rockets went into space. How good is the current result? In principle, it is average, given that after 2014, that is, after the first wave of anti-Russian sanctions restrictions, Russia annually sent from 19 to 29 rockets into space. In 2022, Russia could well have surpassed these figures if the war had not started in February, due to which Russia lost at least 6 launches of Soyuz 2 rockets with 1 Webb satellites and 1 launch of a heavy proton rocket. Of the 22 launches of Russian rockets, only 2 are the new Angara rocket in its lightest single-engine version, Angara 1.2. Both launches were from the Plesetsk spaceport. 1 heavy proton rocket with an Angolan telecommunications satellite was launched from the Baikonur spaceport, and the remaining 18 rockets are all various Soyuz 2 modifications. 11 of them went into space from the Plesetsk spaceport, 6 from the Baikonur spaceport and 1 from another, only the Vostochny spaceport under construction. One of the cancelled launches fell on the Proton rocket, which, as part of the International ExoMars project, was supposed to deliver a Russian interplanetary spacecraft with a European rover to the planet Mars. Naturally, this flight scheduled for September did not take place. More precisely, this is how. The Russian Space Agency, which is called Roscosmos, announced that a new interplanetary spacecraft will be manufactured instead of the Russian landing platform left by the European partner, which will carry out the mission to Mars. Unfortunately, already without a rover. True, here it must be taken into account that this statement was made by the former director of Roscosmos Dmitry Rogozin, who is now engaged in completely different matters. He volunteered for the war, so it is difficult to say how relevant this statement is now. Another Proton rocket did not go into space due to problems with the automatic interplanetary station Luna 25, which has been waiting for a flight since 2014. She again did not fly to the satellite of our planet due to the detection of a malfunction in the measuring equipment. Now the launch of Luna 25 has been postponed once again and is scheduled tentatively for next summer. And what did Russia achieve in 2022? But it turned out to send 2 crews on Soyuz 21 and Soyuz 22 to the International Space Station, replenish the satellite constellation of the GONETS communication system with 3 more vehicles, and move one step further in the creation of a new Soyuz 5 rocket, starting to test new engines of its second stage, as well as tanks and other elements of the first stage. Let me remind you that this Soyuz 5 rocket, designed to launch a payload weighing 17 tons into space, is being created as an intermediate between the Angara 1.2 light rocket and the Angara 5 heavy rocket. The promising Soyuz 5 rocket should partially replace the Proton rockets, which are living out their lives. As for the situation with the Proton rockets, At the beginning of 2022, Roscosmos announced that 10 of these rockets were in storage and 4 more were in production. These 4 missiles will be the last in the Proton program, and then the main stake will be placed on the more payload-lifting Angara 5 rocket. Now such rockets are being manufactured, the launch complex for which is already operating at the Plesetsk spaceport and is being built at the Vostochny spaceport. It will be ready at the end of 2023. In October, in the city of Omsk, where the production of Angara 5 missiles is transferred from Moscow, the construction of a control and testing station intended for them was completed. Why is it important? But because before the stages of these rockets were made in the city of Omsk, then they were taken to Moscow, where they tested and finally assembled, and from there the rockets were sent to the spaceport. Now the Angara 5 rocket will be fully assembled and tested in the city of Omsk, and directly from there it will be sent to the Plesetsk spaceport or the Vostochny spaceport, as a result of which the logistics of its delivery will be dramatically simplified and cheaper. Another important event for the Russian space industry in 2022. On July 15, Dmitry Rogozin, known for his fantastic projects, was dismissed from the post of General Director of the Roscosmos Corporation, replaced by the more practical Yuri Borisov, before that Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian government. In one of his first speeches, Borisov immediately outlined a course for the priority solution of tasks that are more urgent in the current situation than, for example, flight and landing on the moon astronauts. He decided to stake on the development of the Russian orbital space satellite constellation, on the implementation of manned programs, on the commercialization of space activities, on the transition from piece to serial production of satellites, and on the development of the production of the element base, for which Russian cosmonautics is still significantly dependent on other countries. In addition, in his first speeches as Director General of Roscosmos, Yuri Borisov spoke about the futility of Russian participation after 2024 in the International Space Station project, and not for political reasons, but primarily because of its extreme wear and tear, which is why astronauts are forced to spend time on endless repairs instead of research. Therefore, according to Borisov, after 2024 it is more profitable for Russia to withdraw from participation in the International Space Station project and, instead of wasting resources to maintain it in working condition, create and launch its own space station into space. By the way, work in this direction has already begun. In 2022, a contract was signed for the design of a new Russian orbital station called ROS. In August, at the Army 2022 forum, he even showed its preliminary layout. However, with new projects in the Russian cosmonautics in the current economic and political environment, the situation is not unambiguous. As the Italian Marshal Jean Jacopo rightly stated in the 16th century, 3 main things are necessary for war: money, money and money. And each new month of war sucks more and more money out of the civilian sectors of the economy. So, towards the end of 2022, Yuri Borisov already spoke about maintaining Russian participation in the International Space Station project until 2028, which, apparently, is still less expensive than building a completely new orbital station in orbit. Now in Russia it is generally difficult to talk about new space projects in 2023. It will be a great success if the most important among them only slow down and are not closed. It is good that Luna 25 is completely ready and will be launched into space by a large scale and not the most expensive Soyuz 2 rocket, so the chances of flying into space in 2023 are still great. But the projects of promising Soyuz 5 and Angara 5B rockets, a new Russian orbital station, the ExoMars Martian interplanetary station made without the participation of foreign partners, and the promising Eagle spacecraft may well become victims of a new political and economic situation. This is especially true of the Eagle spacecraft, the project of which turned out to be ambiguous, since it was designed with the possibility of being used in the lunar program, involving the landing of astronauts on the moon, the timeliness and necessity of which is now a big question. For this reason, the Orel was made much heavier than the Soyuz. It should be launched into space by the heavy Angara 5 rocket, which is several times more expensive than the Soyuz 2 rocket. Therefore, before discussing the further fate of the Eagle, we must at least wait until the new leadership of the Roscosmos agency decides on its tasks and technical appearance. If we talk about Russia's plans for space exploration in 2023, then we can confidently predict only the dispatch to the International Space Station of 2 Soyuz manned spacecraft and 3 Progress cargo spacecraft, which have already been manufactured and delivered to the Baikonur spaceport.